And we're back to part 2 of the well drilling series on Let's Overthink This. You're going to want to stick around because some surprising things happen during the rest of this process. Last time, we drilled all the way down to 600 feet, and you'll notice in the middle here, when it says we hit 480 feet, it says continuing the next day. There's something that happened there that I skipped over in part 1. At the end of the first day of drilling, they got to 480 feet. Then they pulled out all of their steel drilling rod for the night. They don't leave it in the hole because if something happens at night and the rocks cave in, they'll never get all of the sticks of really expensive steel out of the ground. So they pull them out one by one, unscrewing them, putting them away in the truck or in the carousel. The next morning, they start reassembling those sticks and just putting them in one after another. Just the same process as when they're drilling, except this time there's no drilling because the hole's already there. But they can actually tell when the head of that drill goes underwater because the pressure gauge on their rig goes up. If you think about it, all of that drill rod forms a sealed tube with only an opening in the drill head itself. It all connects back to a pressure gauge on the truck, and if the head is being pushed underwater, their pressure gauge will start going up because they're essentially having to displace all of the water in the hole, and it's compressing the air in the drill rod. So they already knew we probably had water. They get the head down to 480 feet, which is how deep they drilled the day before, and then they essentially blow the compressor full bore through that drilling head, and all of that air pushes whatever is in the hole all the way to the top, so they can see essentially overnight how much water had filled that hole. And you can see here, we're pretty excited by how much water we got. Now the big question after this is how far do you keep going? We knew we had water. We had some idea roughly of what the static water level was because that's when the pressure gauge started to go up as they were putting the rod back in the morning. But the deal is it's really hard to make a well deeper later on. So what we did was we actually drilled all the way down to 600 feet just to give me some extra space in case rocks fall down. Maybe we'll hit another vein and get some more water. We actually didn't. But I just felt like in case the water level goes down over the next however many years, we have kind of an insurance policy that we dug much deeper than the original 480. Now, generally speaking, the next part of the process is putting 4-inch diameter PVC into the ground. We're going to cover this a lot more in detail later. It happens in 20-foot segments, but the reason I'm telling you we'll get back to this later is because something goes wrong right here as they're putting those 20-foot sticks in, and they get stuck. Meaning 120 feet down, some rocks caved in on this 4-inch PVC and they can't keep putting it in. They got to put it all the way out and go to Plan B. Plan B is to pump mud into the hole, as they call it, using this thing called the Mud Slayer. So what this is it's basically a slurry, a mud slurry made out of, I think, bentonite. It's kind of like a clay slurry that they mix up. They pump it through the head of the drill rod all the way down at the bottom of the hole instead of air and water like they were doing before. That thick slurry comes out of the top of the well and just flows down this little channel that they carved out with their shovel, gets sucked up by a hydraulic pump, goes to the top of a little shaker deck, and all the little pebbles and rocks that were keeping the PVC from going in get pushed up by that thick mud and get filtered out. I'm really sorry I don't have more or better footage of this, but this is how they clean out that hole. Then they bail out the hole, which essentially means they take a big long rod and pull all the mud out of the hole to make sure they can proceed with the process, which is putting that 4-inch PVC back in the hole. And this is that PVC. It's Schedule 40, it's 4 inches in diameter, it's specifically made for well casing, and you can see that some of them have these kind of really thin slits on them. Don't know if they're made by a laser or something, but they're very, very thin. Those will be put near the bottom of the well, and essentially that's how the water gets into the PVC. The rest of it is solid, so it can kind of keep the rocks out. The water will go to the bottom of the well along the side of the casing and then enter those slits and keep basically everything other than really fine silt from getting into the pump. They also have a very clever way of attaching to one another. They don't screw together and they're not glued together, which, as you might recall, is great because we had to remove 100 feet of this before when they got stuck. How they attach is there's an internal groove on the female end and an external groove on the male end of this, and a little piece of square plastic is pushed through from the outside kind of like a nylon zip tie, and it mechanically locks the pieces together. You'll see that in a second. Take 2 of putting the PVC in the well hole. 20-foot segments at a time, they attach this orange steel clamp to the female end, lift up the PVC. This is obviously a lot easier than dealing with that steel drill rod. They put a little water on the bottom to keep the PVC from binding to itself, clean it out, make sure it won't have any dirt stuck in there. And they basically jam the male end into the female end. He picks up that little kind of zip tie thing, shoves it through that external hole, and it goes around the internal perimeter of that, hammers it in with pliers, and it mechanically locks those pieces of PVC together. Puts it into the hole. That does not need to be a watertight connection because obviously there's already slits in the PVC. That PVC is supposed to have water in it, so it just needs to mechanically lock these together. Once again, picking another one up off the stack, cleaning it up with some water, and there you go, shoving the little zip tie thing in. Over and over and over again, all the way down to 600 feet. When they're done, the PVC is sitting on the bottom of the hole. They cut off the top, and here's what we have. We have a steel well casing that's 20 feet deep, that's concreted into the ground. We have a hole drilled 600 feet all the way through granite. And then we have a 4-inch PVC well casing that has holes in it that goes all the way down to the bottom of the 600 feet that sits inside of that. Next, we need to make a pad that the steel well casing comes out of that's a nice support to keep the ground from moving around it and just to protect it and all of that. In our area, the county specifies it actually has to be 6 feet by 6 feet square and 6 inches thick. Our well drilling company has a really cool steel frame they already had fitted up and welded that has a draft angle on the side, so it's easy to get the form off of it and also gives you a nice little ramp onto it and off of it. They use that and pour the concrete around it to give you that nice pad. Now we can put the pump in and the actual PVC pipe that carries the water back up to the top. And this is the pump. It's the Grundfos 6SQF3, which is kind of one of these newfangled computer-controlled 3-inch helical well pumps. So trade-offs here. Electronics that are deep in the ground, sealed circuit boards, probably not as long-term reliable as just an old school 220 well pump, but it has soft start. You can run it off of almost anything. Take a look here at the voltage specs. It's 30 volts DC or AC all the way up to 300 volts. So you can power this directly from solar panels. You can power it from a battery bank. You can power it from a little portable AC generator or full, 220 volts AC, all pretty easily, and it ramps up in power, so there's no surge. And as you can tell from the curves here, can pump all the way from 820 feet deep. It only pumps about 6 gallons a minute maximum, but that's plenty because I'll be pumping into a big water storage tank and I'll just be kind of pumping on a regular basis. So it doesn't need to pump at the rate that I use it. It just needs to pump to keep that tank filled up. That pump hangs from a bunch of PVC, which is also how the water gets to the surface. The PVC it hangs from is 1.25 inches in diameter, and it's pretty serious stuff. It's Schedule 120, so in case you're not used to PVC Schedule 40 is kind of the traditional residential plumbing grade. Schedule 80 is usually gray, and it's a thicker wall. Schedule 120 is even stronger. This is probably because we have, at this point, 500 feet of this and a pump hanging at the bottom, so you want it to be pretty strong stuff. It's connected by 1.25 inch female-to-female stainless steel fittings, which are going to be pretty strong and probably stronger than just attaching the PVC to a female PVC fitting. As they attach sections of the PVC to each other, they also attach the wire. In this case, they used real submersible pump wire, which has a very, very thick insulation on it. And this has all the conductors in one. You can see here it has a 600 volt rating, which is plenty. It's 10 gauge. It's very thick and heavy service wire for this, and so they string this up and tape it every however many feet with this green submersible tape. And here's the video of them just going section by section, using a wrench to attach the PVC 20-foot sections at a time, and the cable all the way to the top. At the very top of it, they attach the well cap, which seals off the top of the pipe and lets the whole thing hang from there and have the water come out of there. There's also an inspection port, so they can put in this little sonar tool and tell how high the water level is. And this is also where the wires come out, and they'll attach the control unit for the pump. I should mention there's a few one-way check valves along the way. One of them is sitting there in kind of a bronze color on the left. There's a few of those in the pipe as well that just keeps the water from going all the way down to the bottom between the pump turning on and off. That way the pump kind of always has water sitting in that pipe. And also keeps contaminants from kind of going down the other direction. And the last very satisfying moment is actually turning on the well pump. This is plugged into an electrical outlet on the truck, which is that sound you're hearing, but you can't hear the pump. It's really silent and it's 500 or 600 feet down. But this is the first water coming out of the hole. That's basically it. We have water deep in the middle of the desert. The water at this point is actually very clear and very cool. We're still waiting to have it tested, but from our neighbors, we have a sense of what to expect, and it should be very hard water, lots of minerals, but very, very, very clean. Thanks for tuning in, and come back next time for another Let's Overthink This.